August 1971, Stanford University, a sprawling campus with thousands of students passing through its halls every single day. But beneath Stanford's bright courtyards and polished lecture rooms, a darker world is taking shape. A world where ordinary students will be stripped, blindfolded, and reduced to numbers, where some will be paraded, humiliated, and punished until they break. Where a few will lose their sense of self entirely. What starts as a question about power becomes a lesson in human nature's capacity for cruelty. Within days, laughter turns to fear, and the study collapses under the weight of its own design. The Stanford prison experiment was meant to last 2 weeks, but was terminated after only 6 days. This is how Philip Zimbardo turned his own experiment into a real nightmare. On a bulletin board, an advertisement appears, a psychological study of prison life. Get paid to participate for a 2-week period. Over 70 men respond, young, healthy, students mostly. 24 were chosen. They were randomly assigned as guards or prisoners in a simulated prison. Just a few years earlier, in 1963, psychologist Stanley Milgram shocked the world, literally, when his experiments showed that ordinary people were willing to deliver what they believed were deadly electric shocks, simply because someone in authority told them to. Philip Zimbardo wanted to go a step further from the Milgram experiment, not just obedience, but power itself. His goal? To explore obedience, power, and the corruption that comes with authority. Was cruelty born from power itself, or from something deeper within human nature? The selection was random. A coin toss decided who would rule and who would be ruled. Zimbardo wanted the study as realistic as possible, so the guards were given uniforms, mirrored sunglasses, and wooden nightsticks. But there were 2 main rules they had to stick by. You cannot hit the prisoners, and you cannot place them in solitary confinement for more than 1 hour. The prisoners had it a bit worse. Each was arrested by real police officers, handcuffed, fingerprinted, and mugshotted, then strip-searched and blindfolded like they were real people who committed real crimes. When the blindfolds came off, they were in the basement of Stanford, a mock prison, cells made from old officers, numbers stitched onto their uniforms, their names replaced. Zimbardo said it was for anonymity, but maybe it was to dehumanize them. It didn't take long for the horror to start. On the first night, guards began their routines. Midnight roll calls, whistles, yelling. Some prisoners laughed, thinking it was all an act, but the guards didn't. Push-ups, jumping jacks, extra drills. One guard even struck a prisoner with his baton. A violation of the rules broken already. Zimbardo should have stopped him and kicked him off the experiment. He didn't. The man stayed on, and from that moment, the boundaries were blurred. By the second day, the prisoners had had enough. They ripped off their numbers, barricaded the doors, cursed at the guards, even taunting them. This took place for hours while the guards tried to find a way inside. For a moment, the prisoners reclaimed their humanity. The guards went to Zimbardo and his team to find a way in. They were met with a do-it-yourself attitude. You're guards after all. So the guards retaliated against the prisoners. Fire extinguishers hissed through the cracks of the barricades. Guards stormed the cells and the rebellion was crushed. As punishment, the ringleaders were stripped naked and thrown into solitary confinement. The rest were divided, and because of what happened, the guards wanted to make a statement to the prisoners. A privileged cell was created with special meals, clean clothes, and softer treatment. A system of reward and punishment divide and control. They also moved prisoners around randomly after a few hours with bags over their heads and in shackles, creating confusion and distrust among the prisoners. Then came prisoner 416. He decided the only way to fight back was to stop eating, a hunger strike to force his release. Hours passed, then days. Guards tried to make him eat. He refused. So they threw him into solitary confinement, not for 1 hour, but for 3. The other main rule violation. You'd think 416 would be a hero, a symbol of resistance, but the others saw him as a troublemaker. The head guard saw an opportunity. He gave the prisoners a choice: let 416 out of solitary, but to give up their blankets, or keep them and leave him inside all night. What do you think they chose? All kept their blankets, and 416 spent the night alone, in darkness. The guards were also learning fast, and Zimbardo simply watched on. The study spiraled fast. Guards banned bathroom breaks, buckets replaced toilets. Soon the guards never emptied out the buckets as another form of punishment, as the air turned foul and the walls felt ever closer. Zimbardo reminded them of the rules, but even his voice had lost authority. After 36 hours, the first victim has fallen, and one prisoner broke. Doug Corpy experienced anger, stress, and hysterical crying. Zimbardo described Corpy's experience acute emotional disturbance. He was unable to tell where he was or who he was. Guards noticed his suffering and used it to their advantage to try and snitch on his inmates. But the guards noticed that his behavior was more and more erratic. For the first time, the guards showed a bit of human decency and reported this to Zimbardo. He was released that very moment, and yet, even then, the others stayed, afraid, obedient, and transformed. On day 6, Zimbardo set up a fake parole board. The prisoners believed it was real, as they had their chance to present why they should be free. But something strange happened that Zimbardo and his team noticed. They didn't speak like students anymore. They spoke like inmates, apologetic and ashamed. They had internalized their crimes they never committed. Zimbardo even brought in a local priest to interview the prisoners. One prisoner, number 819, broke down. He sobbed uncontrollably. Staff told him he could leave, but he refused. Prisoner 819 said, "I can't. The others called me a bad prisoner. I have to prove that I'm not." He could hear the others turning on him, their voices echoing through the corridor, chanting, mocking, calling him a bad prisoner. Zimbardo intervened and told him, "You're not a prisoner. You're not even in a real prison. This is just an experiment." 819 looked up. The crying stopped like he was awoken from a nightmare. The guards didn't have to break them anymore. The prisoners were breaking each other. Slowly, they were learning to submit. To make the families feel the weight of the prison, the researchers forced them to go through a registration process. Paperwork, waiting, restrictions. They waited nearly half an hour before being told only 2 visitors were allowed per prisoner. And even then, the visit would last no more than 10 minutes, watched closely by a guard. When Richard Iaco's parents finally saw him, they were horrified. Their son looked drained, filthy, hollow-eyed, barely recognizable. His mother said it felt like speaking to a real inmate, someone trapped and suffering, not a college student in a study. She appealed to Zimbardo himself, demanding to know what her son was being put through. After the visit, Richard tried to reclaim what little autonomy he thought he had left. He asked the staff how he could quit. The response was colder than the concrete floor he slept on. "You can't quit. You agreed to stay for the full experiment." Eventually, the mock parole board approved his release. He walked out relieved, confused, and convinced he somehow earned his freedom. Only later did he learn the truth. He wasn't released because he was coping, but because Zimbardo's team believed he would be the next to break entirely. Psychologist Christina Maslach was brought in to observe. She wasn't part of the team. She was there to interview from another perspective to the study. What she saw horrified her. Men, college students, humiliated, broken, treated like animals. She confronted Zimbardo. "They're being treated like animals. They are suffering. Do you see what's happening to them?" He didn't. Not until she said it out loud. That night, Zimbardo decided to end the study. It was meant to last 2 weeks, but it only lasted 6 days. Every participant was paid in full, but the damage was done. In the days that followed, Zimbardo reflected. He realized he had stopped being a psychologist. He had become the prison superintendent. He wrote that most people will play whatever role they're given, even if it means becoming the villain. He identified 3 types of guards. Number 1, tough but fair guards, whose orders were always within the rules of the study. Number 2, some guards who were the good guys. They felt sorry for the prisoners. They did little favors for them but never punished them. Number 3, guards who enjoyed the power they wielded. The last group was the largest. The prisoners had turned on each other. The guards had lost empathy. The experiment had lost control. And Zimbardo, the man studying obedience, had obeyed his own illusion of authority. He didn't just go further than the Milgram experiment. He discovered what happens when you go too far. Today, 50 years later, the Stanford prison experiment remains one of the most controversial studies ever conducted. Some call it groundbreaking, while others call it a fraud. Apparently, recordings later revealed that the guards were coached, encouraged to be tough. One prisoner even said it was like improv for drama class. Even Zimbardo admitted it was more of a demonstration than an experiment. But the questions remain. If a basement can turn ordinary students into sadists, what does that say about us? Maybe the power to harm isn't born in institutions, but in the people who build them. Maybe the line between good and evil is thinner than we think.